This archetype I've kind of been lazy to get out of the way a bit sooner because it's a big archetype, kind of like monarchs, not as long as them, but pretty close to the card number as monarchs. It's actually an interesting combination. The archetype consists of two archetypes, those being, as you can see in the title, Gaia Knights and Black Luster Soldiers. They're both treated as one archetype for some reason. Of course, Yugimoto used them, and yeah, nothing pretty much else to say about them. So anyway, let's start. We have some vanilla monsters as you'd expect to get out of the way. First up being Gaia the Fierce Knight, which is a more useless version of Red Eyes Black Dragon. Next up we have Black Luster Soldier, which is a vanilla ritual monster which you can summon with Black Luster Ritual, which is an early Yu-Gi-Oh! Ritual spell with no additional benefits. And finally we have Curse of Dragon, which you'd say doesn't belong to an archetype, but we'll soon get to that why it doesn't belong to an archetype. Overall, you use Black Luster Soldier more than Gaia the Fierce Knight because it was a target for trade-in, and it was also one of the fusion materials for Dragon Master Knight if you wanted to choose that build. And Gaia the Fierce Knight has very, very poor stats for a level 7. Again, Red Eyes Black Dragon has better stats, and level 5s overall have way higher attack values than this thing, so yeah, that was kind of the problem with the early monsters back in the day. But anyway, this is an archetype analysis. They became an archetype officially, so let's start looking at their support cards, level by level, spell by spell, and trap by trap. First up, starting with the Super Soldier Soul. We're starting off with some Black Luster cards. Anyway, you can send one Black Luster Soldier monster from your hand to the graveyard until your opponent's next end phase. This card's attack becomes 3000. And this card's name becomes Black Luster Soldier. You can banish this card from your graveyard, add one Beginning Night or Evening Night or Evening Twilight Night from your deck to your hand. You can only use each effect of Super Soldier Soul once per turn. So as you would probably imagine, this used to be a special summonable level 1 with 1/1 level 1 and 3000 attack beat stick. It was somehow managed to rival Mech Lords, I guess. Anyway, jokes aside, this was actually some decent training wheels for the archetype when you couldn't afford to search out the spell card or ritual monster at the time, so this served as a somewhat of a decent replacement, and it could have been used as tribute fodder for a higher level monster. And when you get the ritual spell card, you can ritual summon a Black Luster Soldier monster, so yeah. But it is actually most commonly used nowadays for its graveyard effect, where you can banish it to add one of the two monsters that have been mentioned in this card's effect. So let's take a look at them, shall we? First up, having Beginning Night. A Black Luster Soldier monster ritual summoned using this card gains these effects. You can only use this effect of Beginning Night once per turn. Once per turn, you can target one monster your opponent controls and banish it. When this card destroys a monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, you can activate this effect. This card can make a second attack in a row, and if this card is banished from the graveyard, you can add one ritual spell card from your deck to your hand. You can only use this effect of Beginning Night once per turn. Being a level 4, you're most likely gonna use the second monster as well, so you get a total of 4 new effects for your ritual monster. And other than the original Black Luster Soldier, the archetype has only one other ritual monster, so we'll get to that as well. And anyway, this is actually a mini version of another boss monster they have, which we'll also get to that. And now for the other monster, Evening Twilight Night, also has the same getting effects as the Beginning Night, but the effects are a bit different. First up, once per turn, you can target one monster your opponent controls, banish it. That is the same effect as the Beginning Night. And once per turn, you can banish one random card from your opponent's hand, face down, until your opponent's next end phase. If this card is banished from your graveyard, you can add one ritual monster from your deck to your hand, and you can only use its effect of Evening Twilight Night once per turn. So yeah, you're mostly gonna... So these are actually a very nice searchable warrior walls, since they have 2000 defense each, and they can be searched out with Rhoda, and not to mention the Evening Twilight Knight has some additional benefits due to it being a dark warrior. And yeah, this is a really cool monster to run. Both are actually, and you actually run 2 of each if you want to make a functional Black Luster soldier deck. While Gaia Knight options not being so plentiful at all, yeah, you most likely run the Black Luster soldier stuff in this deck. So yeah, a really cool card, and you should always run at least 2 of each. Next up we have the third mini soldier, as I would like to call them, Envoy of Chaos. During either player's battle phase, you can discard this card, then target 1 Black Luster soldier or 1 Gaia the Fierce Knight monster you control. It gains a 1500 attack until the end of this turn, and if it does, every opponent's monster that battles this turn has its attack become that monster's original attack during damage calculation only. Once per turn during the end phase, if this card is in your graveyard, you can banish 1 light and 1 dark monster from your graveyard, except this card, add this card to your hand. So this is actually a pretty hefty battle boost for an archetype that's already kind of big on the attack values. And not only does it reset the original the monsters your opponent controls back to their original attack, and if they happen to be lowered, I mean, it can be a bit hurtsome, since it resets them back to the original if they happen to be lower than the original. But all in all, it just makes sure your opponent takes damage no matter what, so it's a guaranteed win, I would say. However, the graveyard recycling effect is a bit too costly for the archetype, because some of their better boss monsters require banishing a light and dark monster from the graveyard in order to get their effects off, or in order to special summon themselves. So this still remains a decent one-off at best. Alright, now we're going on to the Gaia Knight representatives a bit. First up we have Skilled Blue Magician. Each time a spell card is activated, place 1 spell card on a spell counter on this card, and max 3 after the spell card resolves. You contribute this card with 3 spell counters on it to special summon 1 Gaia the Fierce Knight monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard. You can manage this card from your graveyard and target 1 card you control that you can place a spell counter on, place 1 spell counter on it. You're probably gonna target another Skilled Blue Magician with this thing's effect, and that is if you even choose to run this thing. Again, this is a bit too slow for nowadays game, and it only special summons a dozen few monsters, since it has to have Gaia the Fierce Knight in its name, and other than the vanilla monster, there are some very, very few and far between monsters that actually have Gaia the Fierce Knight monster in its name. Most Gaia Knight monsters have simply Gaia Knight and something in its name, so yeah, its utility is a bit dampened by modern's game speed. Next up we have Gaia the Midnight Sun. It's a level 4 light warrior with 1600 attack, and you can only use each effect of Gaia the Midnight Sun once per turn. You contribute one other light monster, add 1 level 4 dark warrior monster from your deck to your hand, and then send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard. You can banish 1 dark monster from your graveyard, then target 1 monster on the field. It loses 500 attack until the end of your opponent's turn. Then we have Gaia the Polar Knight, which is the exact same thing as Gaia the Midnight Sun, only its requirements are dark monsters, and instead it increases the attack of the opponent of the monster you control by 500 instead of reducing its attack by 500. So yeah, Gaia the Polar Knight is a bit more searchable and playable since it's a dark warrior. However, I find both to be pretty interesting in concept and worth running at least on 1 each, because they have some interesting effects and synergy going for them. They're both really good searchers, and yeah, they can pull off some nice disruption and searching overall, so I found it to be really nice regardless. Next up we have the retrain of Curse of Dragon, that being Curse of Dragonfire. If this card is normal or special summon, you can target one field spell card on the field, destroy it. Once per turn, you can fusion summon one fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters you control as fusion materials, including this card. Yes, the archetype has some fusion monsters, and some of them require even this thing as fusion material, so yeah, this thing is technically a Gaia Knight card. And the first effect is just a bad ancient fairy dragon. It doesn't even let you gain 1000 life points or search out a new field spell, so yeah. But overall, I mean, if someone is being a clown with set rotations, you can pull off some decent disruption there. But anyway, you primarily run this thing if you want to want access to one of their fusion monsters. Next up we have Swift Gaia the Fierce Knight, the very first retrain of the original monster. And its only effect that is if it is the only card in your hand, you can normal summon it without tributing, which would have been very nice in 2 billion decades ago, but nowadays the game has gotten way too fast for this thing to make any sense. Next up we have Arisen Gaia the Fierce Knight. If your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can normal summon this card without tributing. If this card is tributed, you can special summon one Blackluster Soldier monster from your hand or graveyard, and you can only use this effect of Arisen Gaia the Fierce Knight once per turn. When you ritual summon a Blackluster Soldier monster, you can banish this card from your graveyard as one of the monsters required for the ritual summon. Yeah, you're both basically mostly running this thing again for the graveyard effect, as you're able to use this thing in the graveyard to summon Blackluster Soldiers, especially in conjunction with one of their spell cards. And again, tributing, summoning without tributing, which is normal summoning without tributing, it's too slow. Get it together already, Konami. You ain't gonna win many games with that sort of summoning condition. So yeah, and same problem goes for good charging Gaia the Fierce Knight, which can be normal summoned without tributing. Well, in general it can be summoned without tributing, so yeah. If this card is normal summoned without tributing, its original attack becomes 1900. If this card is tributed, you can add one Blackluster Soldier monster from your deck to your hand, and you can only use its effect once per turn. I find this one worse than the Arisen Gaia the Fierce Knight because, again, it offers searching upon being tributed for a ritual summon most likely, but it's just a worse Beast King Barbaros, because Beast King Barbaros offered you an additional benefit if you tributed more monsters than you needed to tribute this thing in order to get its effect off. So yeah, I would advise not running this one. Next up we have Lord Gaia the Fierce Knight, and actually it's their last main deck monster, so let's see what we got here. If your opponent controls a monster you can control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. Once per turn, if a monster with attack higher than this card is special summoned to your opponent's field, except during the damage step, you can make this card gain 700 attack until the end of this turn. Wait, am I really seeing this? Is this a Gaia Knight monster with a special summoning condition? Finally, it took until the Bonds Beyond Time movie. Oh, sorry, the Dark Side of the Dimensions movie to get an actual good monster. It even turns into a 3000 attack beatstick upon a monster being special summoned, so it's a really nice card. However, it's a decent tech choice if anything, since it's all it does. It's a beatstick, nothing else going for them. Yeah. Alright, now going back to the to the Blackluster Soldier monsters. First up we have the legendary Blackluster Soldier Envoy of the Beginning. Cannot be normal summoned or set, and must be special summoned from your hand by banishing one light and dark monster from your graveyard, and once per turn you can activate one of these effects. Target one monster on the field. Banish that target face up, and this card cannot target the turn this effect is activated. If this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, after damage calculation it can make a second attack in a row. So yeah, this during the GX era when this thing was incepted, this used to be a pretty kick-ass best monster in the game because of how how well this effect correlates with some of the other cards in the archetype, and not to mention being a very nice generic boss monster. It was even so good that it was limited for the longest time. It was just that magnificent, and it's never out of place in a Black Luster Soldier deck. It's a level 8, so you can use it for a ritual summon if you felt like it. It's a rank 10, it's rank 8 fodder. It's just magnificent, really. Next up we have Black Luster Soldier and Evening of the Evening Twilight. Envoy of the Evening Twilight, what am I saying? Cannot be normal summoned or set. Must be special summoned from your hand by banishing all light monsters or all dark monsters from your graveyard, while you have an equal number of each in your graveyard, and cannot be special summoned by other ways. While face up on the field, this card is also a light attribute monster. When this card is special summoned, you can activate the appropriate effect based on the attribute of the monsters banished for this card's special summon. You cannot conduct your battle phase the turn you activate this effect. Light. Target one monster on the field, banish it. Dark. Banish one random card from your opponent's hand face down until your opponent's end phase. So, for that hard-ass balls-to-the-wall summoning condition, you get a weak-ass Trishula. That's it. I mean, for the conditions such as this, I should have expected a monster that, you know, banishes everything your opponent controls, or banishes all monsters from the field and graveyard, or banishes all spell and traps from the field and graveyard, or banishes all cards in your hand face down, or banishes top 10 cards of your graveyard. Not this. The summoning condition for this thing to pull it off is super impossible and inconsistent, so that's why this card is bad primarily. So yeah, that is the main reason why you shouldn't run this thing. Next up we have Black Luster Soldier, Sacred Soldier. When this card is normal or special summoned, you can target one of your banished light or dark monsters in your and one card in your opponent controls. Return that banished card to the graveyard, and if you do, banish the card your opponent controls. You can only use this effect of Black Luster Soldier, Sacred Soldier once per turn. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can target one level 7 or lower warrior type monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand. Yeah, this is actually works in conjunction very well with one of their ritual monsters, one of their only ritual monsters other than the original Black Luster Soldier. Offers you a decent recovery of your banished stuff while banishing stuff the opponent controls, which is lovely. So yeah, this is a really cool card to consider running, so you should probably main deck one or two of these if you feel like it. And now, everything has an end, since Envoy of the Beginning is, well, the Envoy of the Beginning. Every good thing has an end, except, you know, my eternal loneliness and my lack of love life. And yeah, and also One Piece, if I failed to mention that. Jesus, 900 plus episode, good lord. Anyway, I've skimmed enough, off topic enough. And here we are, ladies and gentlemen. This is Chaos Emperor Dragon, Envoy of the End. Cannot be a normal summon set, it must be special summoned from your hand by banishing one light and one dark monster from your graveyard, and once per turn you can pay 1000 life points. Send as many cards in both players' hands and on the field as possible to the graveyard, then inflict 300 damage to your opponent for each card sent to the opponent's graveyard by this effect, and you cannot activate other cards or effects during the turn you activate this effect. Yes, this thing was so goddamn broken that it just broke the game, how powerful the effect was. This is the errata version. Well, the pre-errata version had the same summoning condition, cost, and effect of sending everything in both players' hands and fields to the graveyard. However, it inflicted 300 effect. Oh, why am I emphasizing that? 300 effect damage for each card in the sent, not only just the opponent's, and it didn't have the restriction to not letting you activate other effects the turn it activates the effect. Well, that was because this card was part of a very cruel OTK, as when it sent Sengen to the graveyard, Sengen would then search out Yatagarasu. Your opponent would be open for a direct attack, and then you kept poking your opponent with Yatagarasu until you know, your opponent wouldn't be able to draw, and you kept poking your opponent with the Alagarasu until he dropped dead. So yeah, very, very devastating play indeed. However, since it's errata, it doesn't see that much play at all. In fact, it's limited now to this day. And yeah, it's not very good nowadays, but if you really feel nostalgic, you can make a fun deck using this thing, so yeah. Next up we have a very weird card, being the last main deck monster, that being a Pendulum monster, Chaos Emperor, the Dragon of Armageddon. It has the same stats as Chaos Emperor Dragon, and it's a Pendulum monster, scale 1, and be forewarned, there aren't any other Pendulum monsters in this archetype whatsoever. Yeah. Alright, its pendulum effect is that you can pay 1000 life points and target one of your banished dragon monsters, destroy this card, and if you do, add that monster to your hand, and you can only use this effect of Chaos Emperor Dragon, the Dragon of Armageddon, once per turn. Now for its monster effect. Cannot be normal summoned or set, and must be special summoned from your hand or extra deck. By banishing one light and dark monster, you could from your graveyard, and you can only special summon Chaos Emperor Dragon, Dragon of Armageddon once per turn this way. Once per turn, you can pay half your life points, send as many cards you control as possible to the graveyard, except this card, except from the extra monster zone. And if you do, send cards from your opponent's send cards your opponent controls to the graveyard up to the number of your cards sent to the graveyard by this effect, and inflict 300 damage to your opponent for each card sent to the graveyard by this card's effect. All face-up special summon card will leave the field, return it to the bottom of the deck. So yeah, this is a gimmick card, to say the least. It's a bit of a gimmicky version of Exciton, so it's a bit harder to summon than Exciton, and its effect is barely worth building an entire deck around, and it doesn't see play nowhere near the Black Luster Soldier Gaia Knight deck, so you run it for style points, if anything, and you don't run it any more than once. So yeah, that were the regular main deck monster, and for their last main deck monster we have the Ritual monster, Black Luster Soldier Super Soldier, the one on what Super Soldier Soul is based on. You can ritual summon this card with Super Soldier Ritual. We'll get to that. If this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, inflict damage to your opponent equal to its attack in the graveyard. If this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, or if this card is in your possession destroyed by your opponent's card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon one Gaia the Fierce Knight from your hand or hand deck or graveyard, and you can only special summon Black Luster Soldier Super Soldier once per turn. So yeah, this is actually a really nice retrain of the original Black Luster Soldier. Even special summons Gaia the Fierce Knight monsters, so which are not that too far in between. The floating effect is a bit of a garbagey effect if you want to stretch it there. But yeah, this is a really nice card, and you basically run 3 of these in the Ritual Black Luster Soldier build, since it's their only Ritual monster besides the original Black Luster Soldier. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Now for the extra deck monster. First up we have Gaia Knight, the Force of Earth, which is a level 6 generic synchro monster. Why I'm mentioning him before the fusion monsters? Well, because they have a fusion monster that requires him as a fusion material, so yeah. Basically, if you run a level 6 Earth synchro, you run Goyo Guardian. I'm not gonna say anything else. Next up we have the Link 3, Gaia Saber, the Lightning Shadow, which is a machine which requires 2+ monsters and points left, right, and down. Has the same attack value as the Gaia Knight Force of Earth, and yeah, you usually don't run this Link monster. However, the Link monster you do run is the Black Luster one, that being the Black Luster Soldier, the Chaos Warrior, which is their last Link monster. Requires 3 monsters with different names. If this card was Link summoned using a level 7 or higher monster, your opponent cannot target this card with card effects. Also, it cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can activate one of these effects. This card gains 1500 attack. This card can make a second attack during the battle phase of your next turn. Banish 1 card from your field, on the field. So yeah, this is absolutely a fantastic support card in basically any deck that runs really high numbers of high level monsters. So it's fantastic. It's even sees plays in some rank 10 train builds as in one of their link builds. So it's actually a very good card. They absolutely did their homework on this one. All of the 3 effects are completely busted and worth building your deck around this beautiful piece of gold. And yeah, you should always run 2 or 3 of these in your extra deck. Next up we have Gaia the Dragon Champion, which is a generic fusion between Gaia the Fierce Knight and Gaia Curse of Dragon. Again, don't run it, it's a shitty card if I ever saw one. And next up we have Sky Gallop in Gaia the Dragon Champion, which is the retrain of the aforementioned monster. And requires Gaia the Fierce Knight monster and the 1 Dragon type monster, which is most likely gonna be the Curse of Dragonfire. And this card's name becomes Gaia the Dragon Champion while it is on the field. If this card is special summoned, you can add 1 Spiral Spear Strike from your deck or graveyard to your hand. When this card declares an attack or on an opponent's monster, you can change the battle position of that opponent's monster. I mean, all it does is search a very tricky card, which we'll get into later, and that's about all it does. The battle position changing is irrelevant in this day and age, and in other words, you shouldn't run this thing. Next up we have Gaia Drake the Universal Force, which requires the 1 Gaia Knight the Force of Earth and 1 non-effect Synchro monster. This card cannot be targeted or destroyed by the effects of effect monsters. So again, monster that is immune to monster effects sounds pretty decent on top of a 3500 attack body, but its summoning condition gets me the most. First off, it requires a non-effect Synchro monster, and specifically a Gaia Knight the Force of Earth, which is again a non-effect Synchro monster. And wanna know the funny thing? There are only a grand total of 3 non-effect Synchro monsters in the game. That being Gaia Knight the Force of Earth, of course, and then Scrap Archfiend and Naturia Leo Drake. Those are the only 3 non-effect Synchro monsters in the entire game, and all of them are bad. Well, Scrap Archfiend seems some plays in every 30 scrap decks, but anyway, yeah, this is not worth running because those fusion materials are utter garbage. And their last monster and their last extra deck monster is Gaia Dragon the Thunder Charger. It's a rank 7 Wind Xyz, requires 2 level 7 monsters, and you can Xyz summon this card by using a rank 5 or 6 Xyz monster you control as a material. Transfer the Xyz materials to this card, and if this card attacks a defense position monster, it inflicts piercing damage. The only thing this card has going for them is the special summoning condition, which makes it which you basically want to exploit when making a Great Magnus in some decks, because it makes the journey towards Great Magnus a lot easier in some non-quantum decks. So yeah, in other words, the summoning condition is the best thing this card, this archetype, well, this card in specific has going for it. Alright, time for the spell and traps. First up we have Chaos Form, which you probably should recognize from my Blue Eyes video. It has the exact same effect, it only can special summon Blockluster Soldier monsters, so yeah, not pretty much else to say about this thing. Then we have Super Soldier Ritual, which is used to summon Blockluster Soldier, Super Soldier, and well, basically any Blockluster Soldier monster. And you must also tribute monsters from your hand or deck whose level is exactly 8. And during your main phase, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, you can banish with this card and 1 light monster and dark monster from your graveyard to special summon Blockluster Soldier Ritual monster from your hand, ignoring its summoning conditions. You can only use this effect of Super Soldier Ritual once per turn. The graveyard this effect is actually decent. It's basically an additional copy of Super Soldier Ritual in your hand when you've basically used it already, as you would say. So yeah, this is actually a very nice card, since you know you run Super Soldier at 3, you basically run the Super Soldier Ritual at 3 as well. Next up we have another ritual spell, that being Super Soldier Synthesis. This card can be used to ritual summon any Blockluster Soldier Ritual monster from your hand or graveyard. You must also send 1 light and 1 dark monster from your hand and 1 from your deck to the graveyard, whose total levels equal exactly 8, and you can only activate 1 Super Soldier Synthesis once per turn. Well, this is actually a very cool effect to have. It's actually a prototype of the advanced ritual art spell. Basically, you use Rhoda to search out either beginning night or evening twilight night, and use this thing to use it as a ritual material, and use the other one that you haven't just searched from your deck as ritual material as well. And yeah, you might be thinking that the level has to be exactly 8 is a bit of a bummer. Well, it's not. Both are level 4, so yeah, have a field date with it. Alright, next up we have their field spell, Gateway to Chaos. When this card is activated, add one Blackluster Soldier Ritual monster or one Gaia the Fierce Knight monster from your deck to your hand. Each time a monster card is sent from the hand or graveyard, hand or field to the graveyard, place one spell counter on this card. For each of those cards, max 6. Once per turn you can remove 3 spell counters from this card, add one ritual spell from your deck to your hand, and you can only activate one Gateway of Chaos once per turn. I mean, for the time of its release it was pretty okay, but nowadays this thing is pretty much well, like outclassed by the incantation engine by far. Incantations are still heavily recommended in Blackluster Soldier decks, and if you run this thing you probably run it at 1 or 2, 2 being sometimes a bit too cloggy. So yeah. Next up we have Primal Seed. If a Blackluster Soldier Envoy of the beginning or Chaos Emperor Dragon Envoy of the end are on the field, target 2 of your banished cards, add both of those cards to your hand. So some of you should probably recognize this thing because it's actually semi-limited in the OCG. Why? Because of a certain loop that is present. Basically you have a card like Macrocosmos or any other card that banishes cards instead of sending them to the graveyard, and then you keep using this thing along with DNA surgery in order to make all your monsters machine types, and you basically keep using 2 copies of this to keep recycling limiter removal and another copy of Primal Seed, so you keep making your Blackluster Soldiers have infinite attacks. So yeah, if you want to make yourself a fun little deck using Primal Seed, go ahead and splash in as many of this along with a copy of Macrocosmos and the DNA surgery. And their last spell card is the Spiral Spear Strike, which the Galloping Gaia Knight searches out. It's a continuous spell card, and if a Gaia the Fierce Knight, Swift Gaia the Fierce Knight, or Gaia the Dragon Champion you control attacks a defense position, monster inflict piercing battle damage to your opponent, and if the Gaia the Dragon Champion inflicts battle damage by this effect, you can draw 2 cards, then discard this card. Don't run this, because this thing relies on you running vanilla really useless monsters along with having a very bad effect. I mean, piercing damage is an okay effect, but it's completely irrelevant in this day and age since, you know, link monsters are a thing. So yeah, if it was just remained at draw 2 cards, I mean, it could have been seen at 1 max, but if you have to discard 1 card, then it's not worth it generally. Alright, now time for their first spell card, trap card, beginning of Heaven and Earth. Good god, tongue wrap. Anyway, reveal 3 warrior monsters from your deck, including at least 1 Blackluster Soldier or Gaia the Fierce Knight monsters, and have your opponent randomly pick 1. If they picked a Blackluster Soldier or Gaia the Fierce Knight monsters, add it to your hand and send the rest to the graveyard. Otherwise, send them all to the graveyard. You can only activate 1 beginning of Heaven and Earth once per turn. So yeah, this is actually a trap version of Power Tool Dragon's Equip searching effect, only this one works on archetypal monsters. I mean, you can tech in one of them because it can be a pretty niche searching effect, so yeah, you run by preference. Next up we have Super Soldier Rebirth. Target 1 Blackluster Soldier monster you control, send it to the graveyard, and special summon one Blackluster Soldier monster from your graveyard with a different name from that monster, ignoring its summoning conditions. During your main phase, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card from the graveyard, then target 1 Blackluster Soldier monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand. You can only activate 1 Super Soldier Rebirth once per turn. Yeah, it's basically an archetypal Monster Reborn that ignores summoning conditions, although Monster Reborn is also heavily recommended here. And yeah, it has a nice recycling ability once it's in the graveyard, so 1 or 2 shouldn't hurt. And the last card, finally, is Super Soldier Shield, the counter trap. When a spell or trap or monster effect is activated that targets a monster on the field, while you control a Blackluster Soldier monster, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. If this card is in your graveyard, you can remove 1 spell counter from your side of the field, set this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. Yeah, the recovery effect is a bit cute, since, you know, you're not going to probably be running cards that run spell counters in this deck, so yeah, you mostly use this thing once and then goodbye. However, I would advise running 2 or 3 of these because it's a simple archetypal omni negation, and that's always appreciated in my book. Finally, we get to the grades. Consistency is mostly present in the Blackluster Soldier part of the archetype, and that is very plentiful. While Gaia Knight don't have as much consistency option, but it's still good enough for me to bump it to a 3 out of 3. Power gets a definite 3 out of 3 because it's Blackluster Soldiers we're talking about. Really, you shouldn't have expected anything else. Comeback ability is a bit too flimsy since most of their monsters cannot be normal summoned or set and can only be special summoned through ritual means or some very special finicky means, so still they can come back from quite a number of things, so I'll give them a generous 2 out of 3. And now for the protection, it's mostly not present actually, and the only protection they have is the Super Soldier Shield and maybe some unrunnable Gaia Knight monsters, so yeah, I'm gonna give him a 1 out of 3 there. And as for the versatility, it's and I have 0 complaints about this because they are very splashable and can serve as engine kink starters in many decks, so I'm gonna give him a 3 out of 3 here. And as you would expect from Blackluster Soldiers, they are bound to get some more support. You just have to wait patiently and see to it that they get it one day or another. Good God, this video has been going on quite a while, so yeah, let's end it off here. Thank you all so much for watching. Stay tuned for more videos and updates. Comment, like, and subscribe, and as usual, I'll upload the next part whenever I can. See you all, have a good day, and peace.